Joseph will be speaking from the Competent Communication Manual, project number 1. The entertaining speech. The time for his speech is 8 to 10 minutes. Something personal about him. He was a performing musician from the age of 14 to 21. Your credibility, your life experience, the title of your speech is Playing in the Band. Welcome, Joseph.
Music is and always has been a very important part of my life. Listening to music is one of the great joys of my life, and I have always enjoyed listening and discovering new artists and genres. But in addition to listening to music, I was fortunate from the age of 14 to 21 to play trumpet in a Tejano band in California. Playing music was a very rewarding experience, and so I would like to share some of this experience that happened to me at this time in my life. Like I say, I've always enjoyed music, and where I got this love of music was from my father. From my earliest memories, I can recall music being in our household. We had one of those big Magnavox stereos, big giant piece of furniture, and my father had a big collection of records. He had jazz records, he had mariachi records, he had big band music. My mom had rock and roll records like Chubby Checkers and Twist. So I would hear a very diverse selection of music. And my ears were always open. I was always excited to hear what was coming from that big stereo. And on rare occasions, my dad would actually come home with a brand new record, and he would slice open the cellophane and put it on the turntable and would start playing. And my ears were always excited. Well, it was something new that I hadn't heard. And we would hear that record sometimes non-stop, it seemed, for like 4 or 5, 6 weeks. This was way before iTunes or anything, so you would wear that record out. So pretty soon that record was just really in my heart, my mind, and my soul. I mean, I really enjoyed most of the music that my dad would play. So that's where I got my foundation of love for music. So how did it actually come about that I became a performing musician? Once again, I give thanks to my father. My father, when he was a young man, a teenager, he had aspirations to become a jazz musician. He lived in Northern California, in Salinas, California, a small farming community, but he had a desire to become the next Dizzy Gillespie. So he took up the trumpet, and he started practicing, and he started performing with the local bands there in Salinas, California. They were Latin bands for the most part, playing weddings and that kind of thing. But he had a desire to be a jazz musician. But that dream was not to be fulfilled. He met my mom, and he got married, and so sometime later, I was born, and my 2 sisters. So he wasn't a jazz musician, he was a plumber. So jump start a couple years later, I was about 11, 12 years old, maybe a little younger, and my dad, like I said, he was a plumber, but he walked into a music store one day and he saw a card, and this band had a want ad for, they needed a trumpet player. And my dad was rusty, he hadn't played trumpet in quite a few years, but he answered that ad, and to make a long story short, he became a part-time trumpet player, plumber/plumber. And so I would follow him around to these engagements that he played, him and my mom, and we would go to these dances that he would play, and I'd be excited because for the first time, not only was I hearing records on a turntable, I was seeing my dad actually perform music. So I thought, you know what? This is something that I might want to do. To be truthful, I was not excited about the trumpet. I didn't think it was the greatest instrument in the world because I was listening to like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Who, the current music of the day. I wanted to be a drummer, like the drummers I heard on the Ed Sullivan Show. So I went up to my dad and I told him, Dad, I want to take up an instrument. I want to take up the drums. Well, I said, you know what? We have a trumpet in the house. I already know the trumpet, and you're going to be a trumpet player. So I kind of go away with a sunken heart, say, well, I guess the trumpet it is. So I start taking trumpet in the band, the elementary band at school. My dad gives me a little bit of lessons on the side, and I start working at the trumpet. And at the same time, my father is playing in the band. So as I get a little bit older, a couple years down the line, I start following my dad to his engagements. And I start sitting in with the band. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm actually with the big shots. I'm actually playing in the band. Because I was a young kid. I was only about 12 years old. And I was already playing at these dances, the crowd there and all the dancers and everything that goes along with that. So it was an exciting time. So I did that. And eventually my dad even started his own band. And so I was a full-time member of the band. I was getting paid $20 a night when you played for a weekend. Pretty good money for a 12, 13-year-old kid. So it was an exciting time. And it was a special time because I shared it with my father. But that was all to change with a knock on the door. The knock on the door, and I opened the door, and it was a friend of mine that I knew. His name was Sam. And he was one of the top trumpet players in our little local neighborhood. And he told me, they used to call me Joey. They go, you know, Joey, they go, I want you to take my place in this band. He was playing with a band called Junior and the Preludes. They were one of the top-notch wedding quinceañera bands at the time in Southern California. They were kind of a well-known band for the area. They even had a record out and all that. He says, I want you to be a member of the Preludes. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, that's kind of a compliment. But I was actually kind of nervous. Here I was, pretty young. I'd only experienced playing music with my father's band. So I told him, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to stay with my dad's band. Well, Sam, he was persistent. He said, he kept on calling me and coming to the door. I said, you know what, I know you could do it. So reluctantly, I said yes. And Sam, he would come over every day and he would teach me the songs. Because what was unique about Junior and the Preludes is that they would learn all their music by ear, which for a brass player is pretty hard, because my dad, he would have what they call arrangements. All the music would be written out. So all you have to do is read the notes, and you can play the song. But with Junior and the Preludes, they would listen to records, and you actually had to find your part off the record. That's what most guitar players and bass players and stuff do. But for a horn player, it's kind of hard to do, especially for me. I had never done it before. So I started playing with Junior and the Preludes. I was on to my own personal career being a musician. So I was about 16 years old. And one of the most memorable experiences of playing with this band was in the early days, one of the first engagements we ever played. And it was in Santa Maria, California, which is about 200 miles north of Los Angeles. So here I was, a 16-year-old kid in a bus with a band to experience this great unknown of playing in this city far, far away. So there we arrived. Santa Maria is a small farming community in Central California, but they would have these huge dances, and there would be like 1,000 people there at times. And so we get to the hall, and we're ready to play, and all the dancers are there and everything. And to be truthful, I'm pretty nervous. I think I had played with the band maybe once or twice before that. So one of our big songs at the time that we used to play is a song called Volver, Volver. It's a popular song by Jose Fredo Jimenez. The way we used to play it was with a trumpet introduction. That was me. So there I was. It was time for Volver, Volver. The spotlight's on. The dancers are all ready to dance. And so the leader counts it off, and I start to blow. But what comes out? Not excellence. A bunch of bad, sour notes. I mean, I crashed and burned big time. And I felt about this big. And the dancers even kind of stopped and like, what the heck? I mean, that sounds pretty bad. And like I say, I felt about 2 feet tall, like Fred Flintstone when he wants to shrink away. But as they say in show business, the show goes on. And it sure did. You know, we just kept on, crunching through the tune. And we finished the song. And we finished the night. And to be truthful, the first 6 months or so with the band were pretty rocky. In fact, a couple of times I thought they were going to cut me off. Say, you know what, kid, you're not cutting it. But I continued working at it. At this time, I was very diligently working on my craft, on my trumpet playing. I was practicing sometimes 2 to 3 hours a day. My dad had provided me with some of the excellent teachers in the Los Angeles area. And at the same time, I was listening to a lot of jazz music. I was excited about the music of the day, which was bands like Tower of Power, Blood, Sweat, and Tears in Chicago, bands that played, that had saxophones and trumpets within the music. Also in Tejano music at the time, the band I was playing in was a Tejano band. But that was also a very exciting time for Tejano music because they were exploring like jazz influences and things like that. So I wanted to incorporate like a Miles Davis soul within the cumbia, you know? and actually, it was a cool thing. There were like Little Joe and La Familia, they were doing that kind of thing at the time. Tejano music was very creative at that time. It's kind of I think it's a lost history of Tejano music right now. People forget about that genre of the music. So that area of my life when I was performing music, I look back with great fondness because I look back at the weddings where a couple is sharing their nuptial celebration, and often I would look out at the dance floor and I see all these people dancing and I'm playing my horn. And I think, man, you know, that's a beautiful thing to be able to create music and people are celebrating a great life experience. The time I spent making music was one of the most rewarding but yet challenging times of my life. I played some bad notes along the way, but I always continued to search for the perfect, beautiful note in playing music and in my life.